Live from Leimert Park, USA, I'm Tavis, Smiley, and you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. So glad to see you and me back in stride again. Our phone number, 1-800-920-1580. 1-800-920-1580. All of our socials can be found at KBLA 1580. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Everything at KBLA 1580. Let me also invite you right now to download our app at KBLA 1580. Download the app and take us with you anywhere in the world. And listen to us in real time, but only by downloading our app right now at KBLA 1580. Should you miss us any day in real time, check out the podcast of this program by going to the app, the website, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, so many places to get the podcast of this program and listen at your leisure should you miss us any day in real time. But I am delighted to have you along live with us today for the next 3 hours. You can also watch the live stream of this program by tapping on the KBLA TV icon on our app or by going to our YouTube channel. Excuse me. Let me also invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, how many of you have liberal arts degrees? Raise your hands. I can see you right now. How many of you have liberal arts degrees? Not if you're driving, of course. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. The persistent belief that liberal arts degrees are not financially viable has caused a significant reduction in liberal arts colleges and humanities degrees, despite the fact that 50% of U.S. employers acknowledge that individuals with liberal arts degrees possess job skills, invaluable job skills indeed, that others lack. So, why the decline? What price does the nation pay long-term for this vast reduction in fellow citizens with liberal arts degrees, and how do we assess that reduction? Dr. Gail Green will help us out with those questions when she joins us today in hour two. In our third hour, are our courts, and the Supreme Court in particular, merely politically partisan, or are they wholly illegitimate? Are they just politically partisan? And that would be too much, right? But are they now wholly illegitimate? It is a question worth wrestling with, and so we will interrogate it. In hour three, when Mark Tushnet, Harvard Law Professor Emeritus, joins us for a conversation about the legitimacy, or lack thereof, of our court system these days. But we commence today's program with politics, talking with political commentator and Sirius XM host, Shermichael Singleton, who I'm delighted to have on this program. Shermichael, how are you, sir?
Hey, Tavis. It is a pleasure to be with you, man. I have been a big fan of yours ever since I was much younger. And when I saw the email to come on, I called my parents and I said, holy smoke, Tavis Smiley wants me on his radio show. So thank you for having me on your show. This is really a big deal for me.
Well, holy smokes, Robin. I'm glad to have you on the program as well today. And a lot to talk about in this hour, and I hope your parents get a chance to tune in. But thank you for those kind words. It's always good to know that whatever work and which we've tried to engage, it has empowered somebody along the way, and I appreciate you saying that, so thank you. Let's jump right in, though. We got an hour and a lot to get to. I suspect, Sure Michael, the place to start, as much as I don't want to, is what you know where I'm going, right? What happened at CPAC?
I know where you're going.
Yeah, I know you know. What happened at CPAC over the weekend? So CPAC, as you know, is the Conservative Political Action Conference. They met over the weekend, and take a wild guess as to who won their straw poll to be president, at least as Republicans are concerned, come 2024. So they do a straw poll, and one Donald Trump, who appeared there this weekend, comes out on top in this straw poll. I've been reading about this, in the last, 48 hours or so, Sir Michael, and there are a couple of schools of thought on this, and I want to take your temperature on this. On the one hand, Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence didn't show up for this. So, Trump was the guy who was there. Secondly, he sort of owned this crowd for the last number of years anyway. And so this 62% number that he received over the weekend was not a surprise to some, but it does in fact show that Donald Trump still has some kind of base, even as we expect him to be indicted in the days to come. He does have some sort of base still, of course, on the Republican side. The other way to read this, though, is that Trump, as I said, owned this space. This is his platform. And he can only find his way to 62% of the straw poll. So there are a couple of different ways to see this. How do you read it?
Tavis, that's a really, really great question. And if you looked at CPAC, I used to go to CPAC a long time ago. I haven't been in quite some years now. And you saw a diminished crowd. And I think that diminishment was indicative of where the Republican Party is in totality today, and that's a party that's ideologically fractured. It's a party that is trying to redefine itself. What does it mean to be a conservative? Is it this nationalist populism that Trump has sort of sprouted, if you will, with his first run and ultimate presidency, or is it something much more complicated and complex? I think there's also many questions within the party of which direction should the party go. Do they put all of their support behind Trump again because some at the base level want Trump, or do they say, we probably can't win with Trump, so maybe we need to move on with someone else? And so the fact that Trump won 60+% doesn't really mean much to me, Tavis, as a strategist, because the question becomes, can you pull numbers outside of traditional Republican voters, which is why I think Pence wasn't there. I think it's why DeSantis is all over the country on his book tour right now, trying to figure out, can we have resonance with swing voters? Can we have resonance with suburbanites? Those are two key constituencies that Trump lost when he ran against Joe Biden in the previous presidential run. And it's also two groups, Tavis, that Republicans struggled with significantly if you look at many of the House seats across the country. And so from my perspective, I'm not surprised that the president won. Those are his people, but that is not indicative to me of one's ability to run an effective campaign against Joe Biden in 2024.
I hear that point, but let's not put the cart in front of the horse, because these numbers at some level have to be statistically relevant, at least, because while he may not be able to beat Joe Biden in a second matchup, that might not happen. And let's face it, we don't know that Trump's going to be the nominee. But again, back to the relevance of these statistics, at the moment it appears that he is still the person to beat. He is still the early leader, so that Pence or DeSantis or Nikki Haley or whoever still have to tussle with. They got to come through Donald Trump. But these numbers, again, suggest to me that at this early stage, he's still the guy to beat on the other side.
Yeah, no, I actually would not disagree with that at all. And I think I was just on CNN yesterday talking about this very same topic. And I essentially surmised that if you're DeSantis or Pence or Haley or Pompeo or maybe even Tim Scott, who's apparently considering it, or anyone else out there, you are going to have to climb the hurdle of getting beyond and above Trump.
Right.
And how do you do that without attacking him or insulting him or distinguishing yourself in such a way where you don't turn off, Tavis, that 30% of Republican voters who are extremely loyal to Trump? Individuals, many of them, I believe some estimates around 20%, were completely disengaged and became disengaged only because of Trump. How do you maintain that in order to distinguish yourself and ultimately say, I am the better option? That's going to be really, really difficult, Tavis. And as we saw, again, with the midterms, Trump wasn't on the ballot. Many of those people did not vote. They only voted for individuals that Trump endorsed, but those individuals could not do well in the general election campaign. So there's a lot of complexities here. But to the question that you asked, I think you're right. Trump is the person to beat. But Tavis, look at Atlanta. I think Trump could be indicted there. There are a couple other litigation across the country, New York, where things could really turn, and some of those voters will say, well, wait a minute here. We love Trump, but we want to win. And maybe we do need to start looking somewhere else. And I think that is what could benefit some of those other candidates.
When we come forward with Shermichael Singleton in this conversation, two other things about this Trump matter. We'll move on to President Biden, who was in Selma yesterday, and so much other stuff to get to in this hour. Glad to have him on. But when we come forward, one other thing that's notable about this poll, CPAC, that is, over the weekend, is that Trump is expanding his lead over Ron DeSantis. And that's early in the process now. And some of you hate polls, and I'm not a fan of too many polls myself. But these numbers are all we have to go on at the moment. And it appears at the moment, once again, Donald Trump is expanding his lead over Ron DeSantis. We'll get Shermichael's take on what that means, since DeSantis seems to be the guy everybody's looking to if there is someone that can, in fact, take Trump out. I think people are so much scared about Mike Pence, Nikki Haley. I don't know. But DeSantis is the guy who is on the tour, as Shermichael said a moment ago. So we'll talk about that and what it means that Donald Trump, at the moment at least, is expanding his lead over Ron DeSantis. And we will also talk about these indictments. Trump has said as recently as this weekend that even if he's indicted, he's staying in the race. He's not getting out of this race, even though he may, in fact, be indicted. What does that mean? A great deal to unpack as we move through this hour with Shermichael Singleton on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis, Smiley when we come forward.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
Roll Charmin ultra strong when you drop in the beat. It brings way less effort on your seat. Roll it, drop it, roll it, drop it. Charmin flows extra strong from the road. Your butt hella clean while you're sitting on the bowl. Yeah, it's all you need for that bathroom groove. Get you in and out without nothing to prove.
Charmin Ultra Strong cleans better so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Visit youcanbeatit.org or call 833-422-4255 to ask for medication to treat COVID-19. Sponsored by the California Department of Public Health.
Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you earn at the end of your first year, which means... Wait, hold up. Question for the audio engineer.
Go ahead.
Did I read that right? Discover automatically doubles all your cash back?
Yeah, that's what the script says.
So if I get a Discover card right now, I can earn twice the cash back.
Apparently. Wait. Unlimited first-year cashback match. Only from Discover. See terms and learn more at discover.com/match.
California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast. To learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com. California is a great place to live and work, but those aren't easy things to do for students also going to college. That's why the state created the Californians for All College Corps, a way for students to build skills and help others while earning up to $10,000 for school. Commit to serve your community and we'll help you pay for college. Spots will fill up fast. To learn more and apply today at www.cacollegecorps.com. That's www.cacollegecorps.com.
I switched to Boost Mobile and got a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone. Want to know the best part?
It was free?
Nope.
The fact that it's on America's largest 5G networks?
Nope. It's the ding.
Oh, yeah. Love the ding.
Right? It's all about the ding. It's the dingarooski, the dingarone, the ring-a-ding-ding.
Unleash your power to save with Boost. Get a free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone when you switch. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power.
And the ding.
Limited time offer. New customers only. Available on select networks. 5G not available everywhere. One device per line. Tax excluded. Additional restrictions apply. See your local Boost Mobile store for details.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to Shermichael Singleton, who is a host on SiriusXM on Saturdays, and I'm delighted to have him on. He mentioned a moment ago, he mentioned a moment ago he was on CNN yesterday, so he is a trusted voice on political issues, and I want to get a bit more into his past when we move into this hour. But I want to continue our conversation right now, though, talking about this news of the weekend. Chris Rock wasn't the only one making news this weekend. Donald Trump made some news this weekend, appearing at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, which he has owned for the last number of years, getting some 62% in the straw poll this weekend, making him once again the front runner. He's like Teflon Don. He will not go away, at least not gently, into that good night, as they say. He's still in the race, and for all the talk about Ron DeSantis, Michael, again, Trump walks away with 62% of this straw poll over the weekend. Once again, it's early. I get that, but Donald Trump appears to be expanding his lead over Ron DeSantis at this early stage. How do you read that, my friend?
Yeah, see, that Tavis presents the interesting and unique dichotomy of Trump and DeSantis, at least for me, because it's only relevant with certain types of voters. But when you look at certain polls like the Mars poll that came out last week, Politico did an amazing article on it. Mm-hmm. Nationally, it looks at most Republican primary voters, and they all want DeSantis or someone else other than Trump. And so when you start polling people beyond that ardent base of supporters who, I mean, it doesn't matter if Jesus Christ himself came down and they said Jesus versus Trump, they might still go with Trump. When you look beyond them, you do see that there is movement for DeSantis or someone else. But again, going back to what we were discussing before the break, Tavis, even if you can get someone else and that person is able to pull those voters, you still need that Trump base. Because if not, you can't really win a national campaign. And so that's where I think things get really, really interesting for some of these candidates. How do you maintain those people? Because if Trump doesn't win, he's already stated he's not going to support the nominee if it's not him.
Mm-hmm. No, you said that more than once. And so I take the point that you're making now. Let me pivot to these perhaps pending indictments. As you mentioned earlier, Trump is facing not one but two state investigations, never mind whatever the special prosecutor is doing, who was appointed by Merrick Garland at the Department of Justice. So there are at least three things moving forward. We know there's an independent prosecutor, once again, at DOJ. We know in New York and in Fulton County, Atlanta, Georgia, there are two other investigations that are making headway. And so it is likely that during this campaign, Donald Trump is going to be indicted. No surprise there. And this is no surprise either. He said over the weekend that he would not drop out of the 2024 presidential race, even if he were indicted in one of these several investigations he is now facing. Your take?
I mean, Tavis, look, I'm a conservative, but this is absolutely absurd. There is no way in the world a major party should permit someone who's under federal indictment or state indictment. And as we have heard from the jury forewoman from the Georgia grand jury, if you read through the tea leaves, it does indeed, Tavis, appear that Trump may indeed be indicted pretty soon. Party leaders are going to have to make a clear distinction here. Do we want an indicted individual who could very well be convicted as the nominee of the party? Absolutely not. And I pray to God that the leaders of the party in the House and Senate and even the GOP chairwoman Ronna McDaniel say, you know what, we understand the support for Trump, but all due respect to the former president, you cannot run for the nomination of our party. You got to draw a line and have standards at some point, Tavis. I know a lot of the listeners may say, well, sure, Michael, I hear you, and you're making a lot of moral and ethical sense here, my brother, but the reality is the party hasn't made any standards as it pertains to Trump, and I would agree with that. But, Tavis, I would hope, if it got to that point, that someone would say, okay, this is too far. We have to draw the line here. That's my hope. I may be wrong, but if you don't draw the line here, Tavis, I mean, my goodness, man, do we just accept anything at that point?
Yep. Let me play devil's advocate. You may have heard a promo while you were on hold. Here in Los Angeles tomorrow, a major case begins. Our friend and brother who has represented this area with this station's flagship for over 30 years in a variety of offices here in California, Mark Ridley Thomas, goes on trial tomorrow in a federal bribery case. I have maintained all along, particularly and especially where black electeds are concerned, because I've seen this happen so many times in my career. I've reminded this audience time and time again, Michael, of the following three things that are a bedrock of our democracy. Presumption of innocence, fundamental fairness, and due process. Presumption of innocence, fundamental fairness, and due process. That's been my take about the Mark Ridley Thomas case that begins tomorrow. And for those who have not heard it as yet, weekdays starting tomorrow at 4:35, exclusively on your station, KBLA Talk 1580, you will hear Reva Martin in conversation with our brand new justice correspondent. Her name is Dion Raymond, brilliant attorney. Dion Raymond is the new justice correspondent for this station. She's going to be in the courtroom every day covering this trial exclusively for KBLA Talk 1580. And every day at 4:35, you can tune in for your daily download. I know you don't have time to watch it every day, but I know you care about it and you're concerned about it. You don't want to be surprised at the end when this thing turns out whatever way it's going to turn out. But every day, Dion Raymond with Reva Martin will be downloading what happens in the courtroom every single day that this case proceeds forward. And you'll hear that only on KBLA. No other station in town, no other outlet in town is going to cover this every single day like we are and give you an update. So just tune in every day at 4:35, and you'll be updated right quick here on what happened in the court today vis-a-vis the trial of one Mark Ridley Thomas. My point, though, Michael, is that I've been saying where this brother is concerned, presumption of innocence, fundamental fairness, and due process. So why can't I, playing devil's advocate, why can't you, playing devil's advocate, say the same thing about Donald Trump? Just because he's running and just because he's indicted, presumption of innocence, fundamental fairness, due process. Don't laugh. I'm just asking the question, brother.
No, I think that's a fair question, and I want to say just to be transparent for your audience and for you, because I think transparency is important. I do know Mr. Ridley Thomas. I went to Morehouse undergrad. I know both of his sons. I've known them for a very long time. And I am praying that this goes in favor of Mr. Ridley Thomas, and I may be biased because I do have an affinity and affection for the family, so I just want to be transparent with that. With that said, to answer your question, Tavis, I don't know how the hell I'm going to answer this. But Tavis, I just think the Republican Party is just at a point of complete disarray, Tavis. And this is the issue. You know, there are some things with Trump that I thought, okay, you know, these are some pretty decent things. But there comes a point in time when you look at a populist-like movement, and this is the issue with populism, historically speaking, in general. Once you have that angst and that anxiety and that anger and you build it into something, what does it translate into? And that's a question that the party hasn't been able to answer. And so I think beyond what happens with Trump and the presumption of innocence, which he absolutely deserves, because that is the way our justice system should work, although that's typically not always the case for people like us, black people, that is. I just think the party needs to go in a new direction, Tavis. The party needs to redefine itself. The country is becoming more diverse. The GOP has to realize that honing in only on white voters just mathematically will not be enough. And so we need to have questions. What is the conservative answer to criminal justice reform? What is it beyond the First Steps Act, that is? What is the conservative answer to some of the systemic issues of poverty that we see in our inner cities, education that we see in our inner cities, the health disparities that exist in our inner cities? I've spent a lot of time, Tavis, thinking about these things intellectually, trying to figure out legislatively how do we approach them as a conservative, as a Republican Party, which I happen to be independent now. That's what the party needs to think about, and I don't know if the party can do that, Tavis, with Donald Trump leading it.
No, and I want to talk about your journey from being a member of the GOP to being an independent. I know, and those who follow you know that you have worked in the past with people like Newt Gingrich and Mitt Romney and Ben Carson. I like to talk to all kinds of folk on this program, as I say all the time. I am not afraid to have my assumptions re-examined. I'm not afraid to expand my inventory of ideas, not afraid to be proven right, for that matter, on the issues and things that I believe in. You can only do that in contestation with other persons who have differing points of view. So I welcome conservatives time to time on this program, and you, of course, being not independent, but I welcome these other voices. I want to get to a bit of your backstory as a black man when we come forward. In the 2 minutes I have before news, traffic, and sports, let me get back to the point you raised a moment ago, Sir Michael, about what the RNC chairwoman, Ms. McDaniel, ought to do if, in fact, Donald Trump is indicted. It's a lot easier said than done. She could come out and say, we do not respectfully want an individual who has been indicted running for the nomination of our party. But that puts her, not unlike Ron DeSantis, not unlike Mike Pence, not unlike Nikki Haley or anybody else on the other side, that puts them in a tete-a-tete with these Donald Trump supporters. The guy just got 62% of the straw poll at CPAC. So how does the chairwoman of the party come out and say, we don't want a guy who's been indicted running for the nomination of our party? How in the world would that be responded to by those who do, in fact, support Trump in the party? And you think the party has disarray now? What would happen when she comes out and says the front runner needs to drop out?
They probably won't like it, but I guess my rebut to that will be, what moral and ethical obligation do leaders have to do what is right? As my grandmother once taught me a long time ago, the truth bears no lie. And so that is to say, if we know we're moving in the wrong direction, if we know that we can do better, if we know that the voters themselves deserve better, even if they may not see it themselves, as a leader, you must take that risk and say whatever the repercussions may be from the people, we know that we're making the best decision long term, not only for the interest of the party, for the interest of the entire country, Tavis. I mean, we're at a breaking point in this country right now. You look at the history of past civilizations, great ones that is, you look at the internal strife and struggles that led to all of the downfalls. We are at the precipice of that in this country right now. You look at China as our greatest adversary and the advances that they're making on a significant number of fronts. and the threats and risks that those things pose to us. And I think the party has to say, this is bigger than just this one election. And maybe we lose in 2024. We're going to be willing to accept that if that's what it means, resetting ourselves as a party and moving in a better, healthier direction, not only, again, for the party, but for the country. I think things are bigger at stake than just Trump and the Republican Party winning in 2024. And that, for me, would be a risk that I'm willing to take, Tavis.
I hear you loud and clear. On the other side of news, traffic, and sports, I'm going to come right back to this question. It's one thing to say that the chairperson of the party ought to, in fact, ask Donald Trump to get out of the race. If, in fact, he's indicted, which appears likely by one of these three investigations. I don't see it, though. As I sit here today, I do not see Ms. McDaniel, the chairman of the Republican Party, coming out and saying publicly that Donald Trump ought to get out of the race. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. Don't see it as I sit here today. So Michael suggests that's what she ought to do. When we come forward, I'll ask him, does he think in reality she will, in fact, do that? So talking with our guest, Michael Simpson, host of his own show on Sirius XM, but today he's on KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is hitting back at those who criticized his trip to the site of a toxic train derailment in Ohio. Speaking to CNN, he said the visit to East Palestine had nothing at all to do with former President Trump going there as well. Buttigieg was so upset by the suggestion that he used some choice language to make his point. A Michigan State police trooper is facing assault and battery and misconduct in office charges. Trooper Paul Arrowwood was arraigned Friday in Saginaw County for an on-duty incident from last September. Arrowwood faces up to 5 years in prison if convicted on the misconduct in office charge. He punched a black man several times while attempting to arrest him without providing an explanation. And that's the latest. I'm Mark Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Got a crash in our leader block on the slow lane on the 5 south at Osborne Street. That's a mess starting back at the 405. And in Boyle Heights, they're working on a crash on the ramp on the 5 south one towards the 60 eastbound, adding to a crash starting back at Glendale Boulevard. In Azusa, we had a crash on the 210 eastbound at Citrus Avenue. They made it to the right-hand shoulder, still kind of slow from Vernon Avenue. And in Linwood, they're working on the motorcycle crash 105 east on past Long Beach Boulevard. That's still a tough drive from the 110, trying to get vehicles out of the middle lane there.
Shop Albertsons and Vons for big savings. Yoplait yogurt, 4 to 6 ounce selected varieties are 18 cents each. Limit 24 with digital coupon. And General Mills cereal, 8.9 to 12 ounce selected varieties are $1.47 each when you buy 3. Limit 6 total.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A positive day for both of LA's NBA teams. The Lakers beat Golden State by 8. The Clippers snapped their 5-game losing streak with a come-from-behind win over Memphis. For the Lakers, a huge game from Anthony Davis, 39 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 block shots. First win for Russell Westbrook since February 2nd when he was with the Lakers. Memphis played without All-Star John Morant, who was under investigation by the NBA and law enforcement for displaying a gun at a nightclub over the weekend. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. This sports report was brought to you by Original Taco Pete.
Aaron at Original Taco Pete's. Come in today for our tasty seasoned black taco. We're at 3272 West Slauson, off Crenshaw, or call 323-348-4441.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Our Weekly Los Angeles is the largest audited black newspaper in the state of California with a distribution of over 50,000 copies weekly. Pick up a copy every Thursday to get the latest news on African American communities of LA. You can also keep up with what's going on in Los Angeles and surrounding cities by going to www.ourweekly.com. The Our Weekly website is updated daily with the current news about us and for us. For your advertising needs, Our Weekly offers economic economical advertising packages to fit your budget. Feel free to call our Weekly Los Angeles at 323-905-1300 or visit the website at www.ourweekly.com. Our Weekly Los Angeles, reporting news that matters to you.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here at KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I was able to speak with one of the panelists, the owner of Kids Love. Take a listen.
So Kids Love, KIDSLUV, is a first-to-market zero-sugar, vitamin-enhanced functional beverage for kids.
So the zero sugar is really important because if not, the sugar gets on the teeth, it can cause cavities. So as a mom, I love this vitamins and hydration in one. Tell us what's happening here with Chase Bank today.
So I would say I think what Chase is trying to do is create a community, actually, for entrepreneurs, a place where people can go. They have the space to do it. It's a beautiful space. And to be able to have these conversations. There are so many benefits to being a women-owned and certified business from a standpoint of getting into stores, not paying the slotting fees of what it takes to be in stores. So I think Chase is trying to bring awareness to a lot of the things that people just don't know about, that not only the bank can help, but outside of the bank, their relationships can help create.
That's beautiful. And I know, this is how we build equity in communities of color, is kind of spreading that information and that knowledge. So thank you for being here today and doing your part and letting these women know that it is possible. For KBLA 1580, I'm Maisha Cairo in the community with Chase.
I had a nighttime routine for my frequent heartburn. I would drink milk. I would sleep upright with more pillows. But that painful burning stayed. So I made Prilosec OTC part of my morning routine. With just one pill each morning, Prilosec OTC prevents excess acid production, blocking heartburn day and night. Now I have a new nighttime routine. I call it sleeping.
One pill a day, 24 hours, zero heartburn. With Prilosec OTC. It's possible while taking Prilosec OTC. Use as directed for 14 days to treat frequent heartburn, not for immediate relief.
Research shows listeners prefer a personalized experience. So to help you remember, Liberty Mutual customizes your home insurance. We personalized this ad for Amber, who really misses boy bands from the 90s.
Hey girl, I'm the cute one, here to tell you how Liberty Mutual customizes your home insurance so you only pay for what you need.
I'm the heartthrob. The only thing I love more than you is saving. And I'm the other boy in the band everyone forgot about.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins. I'm Tavis, Smiley. Glad to have you tuned in this hour. Before I get back to our guest of this hour, Sir Michael Singleton, talking about all things politics today. For those who watched last week, it was last Tuesday, a week ago tomorrow. Last Tuesday, we had our radio premiere play of The Return. For those who didn't see it, this is a radio play exclusive on this station that imagines Martin and Malcolm returning to Earth 50-plus years after their assassination. They come back to Earth for 1 hour, and during that 1 hour, they sit for a conversation with a guy named Tavis Smiley. And Tavis Smiley gets a chance to ask Martin and Malcolm a variety of questions about contemporary issues that we are facing. It's called The Return. It's a radio play that we broadcast live here Tuesday morning last week at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Tons of you listened to that conversation. How do I know it? I'm seeing your posts. I'm getting your emails. You're stopping me on the street when you see me in the city and moving about. Thank you for listening to that play, that radio play, The Return. And you'll be happy to know that we have posted, as of late last night, a number of pieces of footage behind the scenes. So we filmed it. And there are 3 beautiful clips of The Return, behind-the-scenes footage of us doing this live in studio. If you heard it on the radio, you can now see footage of us actually in studio working this thing out. The great actors, Gerald C. Rivers, and Maurice Kitchen, who also wrote the radio play. Rivers plays King, Kitchen plays Malcolm. But you can actually see footage of it now. So go to any of our platforms, YouTube, any of our platforms. It's called Behind the Scenes of The Return. Behind the Scenes of The Return. If you want to just check out some video clips of what it was like actually in studio while you were listening on the radio, Those 3 different clips are posted right now, and you can check those out to see what was happening in real time while you were listening again on the radio. So that's posted right now. Check it out. Tell your friends. It's called Behind the Scenes of the Return on any of our social media platforms. You can find it. Now, back to Michael Singleton. He's the host of his own show on SiriusXM. Delighted to have him on in this hour talking on KBLA Talk 1580 today about all the political news over the weekend. In case you just tuned in, Donald Trump won the straw poll last weekend at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, making him once again, at the moment, the front runner for the Republican nomination. Michael said before News Traffic and Sports moments ago that if, in fact, Donald Trump is indicted in one of 3 different cases, it could be out of Atlanta, Fulton County, it could be out of New York State, it could be out of the federal government. Who knows? But there are any number of routes that lead to indictment, perhaps, for one Donald Trump. He said this weekend at that CPAC conference that even if he is indicted in any of these investigations, he will not drop out of the race. And so Michael Singleton says that if, in fact, that's the case, the chair of that party, Ms. McDaniel, should say loudly that we do not want someone seeking our nomination. We will not have someone seeking our nomination who has been indicted. We don't want that. It's not good for the party. I get it intellectually, but I can't see that happening. So the question, Michael, is it's one thing to say she ought to do that. Tell me why you believe that she will, in fact, do that. Not the same thing.
You're right, Tavis. Not the same thing at all. She won't do it because, politicians, political leaders are most concerned about self-preservation and power. And I get it. I've worked for enough of them. I've helped enough get elected to understand that first and foremost. And Republicans want to win. They look at the last midterm and saw they got a complete beating in the House. They did not win the Senate as expected, and a lot of donors who put in over $1 billion to try to help Republicans win aren't happy about it. Ronna McDaniel herself had multiple individuals contesting her reelection to the GOP chairmanship. And so first and foremost, she's going to look at all of those variables and say, we got to stand behind Donald Trump. And that's what I predict that she will continue to do.
Yep. Well, I'm glad we agree on that part. So again, it's one thing to say it. It's one thing to make it a moral imperative. I get that. It's another thing to see it in actuality, and I don't see it coming, and I'm glad you don't either. I was going to say, Michael, I love your analysis, brother, but put down the crack pipe. Put down the crack pipe. If you think
we got to keep morality and ethics alive, right? And we got to keep some type of standards left in this country.
Somebody does. Somebody does. I would say amen to that point. Let me pivot to your politics, and then I want to move from there to Joe Biden, who was in Selma yesterday. Tomorrow, of course, the big anniversary of what happened on Evan Pettis Bridge in Selma. We'll get to that in a moment. But you have worked in the past for Newt Gingrich, for Mitt Romney, for Ben Carson. I don't know Mitt Romney personally, but I know Newt rather well. I know Ben Carson, of course, rather well. But you've worked for a number of persons, as you mentioned earlier. You've got a lot of Republicans elected over the course of your career. And I'm always fascinated by young black men like yourself. We've been seeing a lot of stories of late that black men in particular are being, turned on by Republican politics. You see black men in certain races voting at numbers that are a little striking for some of us. Numbers where they're voting for the Republican candidate. So there's been that conversation, which we won't get into today. We'll have you back a later time, just perhaps to talk about black men and Republicans. You've moved from being a member of the Republican Party to being an independent, but just give me the quick backstory for how Michael Singleton got pulled into being a Republican as a young black male in this country.
So when I moved from New Orleans to Texas, I started a Teenage Republican Society chapter. And my tennis coach at the time was a Republican. And he was sort of a great mentor, and I was really starting to get into politics. I fell in love with politics at a very young age because of my great-grandfather, and started learning a little bit more about the ins and outs. I was like, oh, wow, okay, this seems interesting, so I'm going to be a Republican. And clearly, as I got older and started to understand the dynamics of politics, generally speaking, and both parties, it just sort of seemed to me that my upbringing was certainly rooted in conservatism, although most black people don't vote Republican today. So I began to sort of think, well, shouldn't there be a place for black people to vote in the Republican Party that sort of advocates for some of the issues that are important to black people? I understood why most don't today, but we need somebody fighting for that because I personally believe that it's just not enough for us not to have diversity in our political power. And so that's sort of why I joined the party. Tavis, I was well aware of the issues that the party faced. I was well aware that the party certainly isn't as progressive on racial issues as it once was 80, 90 years ago. And I sort of felt that there needed to be black people who were in touch with the community, who were in touch with the issues that plague our community to say, hey, I'm a black person, I know what's going on in my community. Republicans, when you're in power, you need to address these issues in the right way. And I tried to do that. And I got to a point where I just realized, Tavis, while there were people in the party who agreed with me, who said, Michael, you're absolutely right. We got to do some things differently. We've made a lot of drastic mistakes over the past couple of decades as it pertains to black voters. It wasn't enough. And so I said, I'm fighting a losing battle. So I decided to leave the party and become an independent.
What's fascinating about that is that your friend and my friend, I've known Michael Steele many, many years. Michael comes on this program from time to time. Michael feels the same way you feel about the present state and the future of the GOP. I'm not sure there's much difference in how you guys view that, but Michael has decided to stay. You walked away. What's the difference?
So I talk to Michael Steele regularly. He's a good friend of mine and was a mentor for a long time. And the former chairman believes that if someone comes into your house, you should fight them out. And I understand that principle. I just don't believe, Tavis, just seeing where the party is intellectually, I don't think there's a winning fight there. I think until leadership decides we're tired of losing, this trajectory does not set us up for long-term gains. Until that happens, for me, I don't think I can really add much. And so I'm hoping that will come, and I think it will, because the mathematics won't lie. The country's becoming more diverse. White birth rates are down. That's a majority of Republican voters. The bill will be an epiphany. I can guarantee you that at some point.
Yeah.
I just don't know when that will come, and I'm not willing to wait. When it comes, then I'll reassess things and say, okay, they finally had a wake-up moment, then I'll sort of join and help rebuild. But I'm just tired of it, man. I think that black people are going through a lot of things. People in general, white people, are going through a lot of things. And we need to have a healthy political system in this party where there's liberalism or conservatism that is having healthy debates to try to solve those things. People need that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that enough people are getting that right now. So that's sort of the way I assess things.
So when we come forward to the point you just made now, Michael Steele, of course, was, in fact, the first and only, for that matter, African-American to lead the Republican National Committee. I want to ask Michael Simpson whether or not he thinks, and I'm not naive in asking this, but I do want to get his temperature on whether or not he thinks the party, the GOP, will ever do better by black folk. Steele was the first. He's still there. Michael was there and left. But the question is whether or not Michael Singleton thinks that the GOP will ever do better by black people. Will they ever have an agenda that will cause them to be considered more assertively, more seriously by African-American voters? That and a great deal more when we come forward to Michael Singleton on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you had it up to gear with cultural and comedy. KBLA Talk 1580.
Black women get the job done. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry. Story courtesy of CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Representative Barbara Lee holds her first campaign rally at Laney College in Oakland, California, declaring, "We fight for freedom, dignity, justice, and together we win." Representative Lee said that that's why she's running for U.S. Senate. She is the highest-ranking African-American woman in the U.S. Congress and the only African-American so far in the 2024 California senatorial race. Lee, who is 76, is serving her 12th term in the U.S. Congress. I'm Maisha Cairo for KBLA 1580, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dominique DePrima, host of First Things First, weekday mornings from 6 to 9. Join me tomorrow with a nationally recognized advocate regarding the policing of black youth. author, Georgetown law professor Kristen Henning. That's Tuesday, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 welcomes the U.S. premiere of the Bob Marley One Love Experience. Open now through April 23rd at Ovation in Hollywood. Enter to win a pair of VIP tickets on the KBLA app or KBLA1580.com. A One Love Experience poster, vinyl record, and souvenir. This has been a community call to action brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580. Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
So, Michael Singleton, will the GOP ever, you think, do better by African-American voters? Will they ever give them something to vote for? Will they ever have an agenda? This reckoning that you say is coming. I suspect this epiphany is the word you use. I call it a reckoning. You call it an epiphany. Same thing. Will it ever get to a point where they will start to advance an agenda that black voters can take seriously?
Yeah, I think so. I think when they start losing, Tavis, to the point that I was making, the demographics just are not on the side of Republicans. Again, you're seeing a decline in white birth rates, not only in the United States, but across Europe. It's why in Europe now you're seeing nationalism, populism increase again. You're seeing a lot of racial dissent increase again. And for the first time in a very long time, I must say, by the way, you're finally starting to see an increase in the black population, which I think is a really, really positive sign. I think that's attributed to our life expectancy increasing, better education, better paying jobs, less abortion rates, and all that is tied in. I don't want to get into the abortion thing, but I'm just all of that I think is a positive thing to have more healthy black families, more black people. I think is a necessary thing because there is indeed power in numbers. But with that said, I think when the GOP starts losing and losing significantly in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, Tavis, they will have no choice. I mean, this is just not your Michael Singleton's opinion. This is based off of raw numbers, Tavis. At some point, the numbers will demand that the GOP target and outreach to other people outside of majority white voters. That is just a fact.
Yeah. From your mouth to God's ears, we shall see, my friend. Let me shift from having talked about Donald Trump to talking about Joe Biden. Trump could be the nominee once again, and if Biden runs again, it'd be a face-off once again between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. So let me shift now to President Biden, since we've already talked enough about Donald Trump. President Biden is in Selma yesterday, as we all know, on that Edmund Pettus Bridge. Tomorrow is the 58th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. That's tomorrow. But President Biden was there yesterday, and he said, and I quote, "Selma is a reckoning," close quote. Selma is a reckoning, is what the president had to say yesterday. And let me just say to you, with all due respect to Joe Biden, I've had enough of it. I may get in trouble for saying this. I've had enough of it. I'm tired of the annual treks to Selma. I'm tired of the annual marches across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. History matters. Make no mistake about it. But every election, as Bill Clinton once said, is about the future, not the past. And I've had it because they keep going to Selma every year for the anniversary of Bloody Sunday. But nothing is happening on voting rights. And it's starting to appear and feel to me a great deal more symbolic than substantive. We do it every year, but it's more symbolic than substantive. Nothing is happening on voting rights. Nothing is moving in the Senate on voting rights. Democrats now control the Senate, not the House as they once did, but nothing has really happened here. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Sir Michael Singleton, I'm curious as to whether he feels as I do. This is getting to be kind of old for me. I'm getting worn out, again, by these annual journeys, these treks to Selma. Everybody goes there, marches across the bridge, and enacts what happened 58, 57, 56, 55 years ago. We're 58 years later now. Almost 60 years later, we're still reenacting this march across the bridge, but nothing is moving, nothing is happening on voting rights. I digress, at least for the moment. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
We may be LA's newest talk station, but when you're punching above your weight, it's not about whether you can throw a punch. Can you take a punch? We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. And we don't black down. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
The rent is too damn high. KBLA joins you in calling for affordable housing. The LA Tenants Union is a diverse, tenant-led movement fighting for the human right to housing for all. The LA Tenants Union demands safe, affordable housing and union rent control. They organize against landlord harassment, mass evictions, and displacement, and mobilize for the repeal of the Ellis Act and Costa-Hawkins Act. The LA Tenants Union is on a mission to strengthen tenants' political power through education, advocacy, and direct action. To get help with your eviction or other landlord-tenant issues, take action for justice, or become a member, visit latenantsunion.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Let's get back to business, Los Angeles County. The Economic Opportunity Grant Program is now open. This program is designed to provide financial support to qualified small businesses, micro-entrepreneurs, food industry businesses such as restaurants, and nonprofits in Los Angeles County. Approximately 4,600 grants of up to $2,500 will be administered to qualified micro-businesses that face barriers to accessing capital resources. To learn more about this, visit www.grants.lacounty.gov. The application process is fast and easy. Don't miss the opportunity to get back to business. This program is administered by the County of Los Angeles through its Department of Economic Opportunity and funded in part through a grant from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. Application portal is powered by Lendistry. Visit www.grants.lacounty.gov and get back to business.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
This conversation does matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley and Shermichael Singleton in the last 4 minutes we have at least. I gave you my take a moment ago, Shermichael. I'm as committed and dedicated to voting rights and civil rights and human rights as anybody. My work and witness over these decades, I hope, speaks to that. And yet I'm getting tired of these annual treks to the bridge so long as nothing happens in Congress. That's me. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, look, you may not be surprised by my opinion on this, and perhaps your audience would not be surprised either after knowing more about my background politically. But I agree with you. Look, symbolism is great and all, but symbolism doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't put money in the bank. It doesn't create safety in communities. It doesn't create a lateral movement of economic prosperity or generational wealth or sustainability of said wealth. And so while, it looks good and all, Tavis, I really don't care about it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a smart guy. I read history. History is important. We should teach our children history, and the country should maintain historic relevance. But black people need real solutions today, whether it's voting rights, whether it's education, whether it's the lack of really good jobs in our communities, whether it's our inability to really create the type of wealth that is necessary, which is why there's a big conversation right now about reparations, which your state of California seems to be making, because my conservative disposition is you're going to have to pay for things one way or the other. I would rather create positive opportunities for people versus paying for the negative things as a result of the lack of those positive opportunities. And there's a conservative argument to make that case, Tavis. So it looks good and all, but I would say to the president, who in my personal opinion has been quite demeaning to black people. Remember when he got elected, he had that conversation with the quote-unquote black leaders, and pretty much said, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. And my opinion was, well, with all due respect, Mr. President, there would be no President Biden if it were not for black people in South Carolina and black people nationally speaking. And so I think while I respect Joe Biden, I think that he has not done enough, in my opinion, for black people. And I think we as black people need to demand far more from him and Democrats writ large, in my personal view. And I don't think that we are.
Well, my view is I'd rather him stay in Washington and work with his own Democratic Senate to get something done on voting rights rather than wasting taxpayer dollars and fuel to fly back down to Selma yet again to march across this bridge. He did have the right words to say, though. I quote from the president, as I come here in commemoration, not for show, Selma is a reckoning. The right to vote and to have your vote counted is the threshold of democracy and liberty. With it, anything is possible. Without it, without that right, nothing is possible. And this fundamental right remains under assault, close quote. He said exactly what needed to be said. Now let's see if he can do what needs to be done. Again, I digress for the moment. Our guest in this hour has been Shermichael Singleton, host of the Shermichael Singleton Show on Sirius XM on Saturdays, channel 126. Shermichael, good to have you on. We'll do it again somewhere down the road. I am certain. All the best to you, sir. Give my best to your parents, please.
Tavis, this is a real pleasure. Please call me back. I'm really grateful for you for this opportunity.
My great honor to have you. Hour 2 of Tavis Smiley. After news, traffic, and sports, we got 2 more great hours to go. You're listening to Tavis Smiley right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is hitting back at those who criticize his trip to the site of a toxic train derailment in Ohio. Speaking to CNN.